Okay, so we talked about our carbohydrates, which is our first macromolecule we're talking about. Remember, carbs, lipids, proteins, nucleic acids. So now we're on our second, which is our lipids. Lipids are hydrophobic. They don't like water, they're scared of water. That's why when you try to put vegetable oil with water and mix it up, no matter how hard you try, they're not going to mix. Lipids are nonpolar. Waters are polar. Okay, so do you guys remember what polar and nonpolar is? Refer back to that if you forgot. Okay, it has to do with those electrons going around a nucleus. That's a hint. Okay, but okay, lipids, nonpolar. Okay, they're really, really good though. Think about it. If lipids and water don't mix, that's great for aquatic mammals like this otter. It's also good for polar bears. Why? Why is it good for them? Okay, think about it. If they have lipids on their back and on their fur, what is that going to do when water gets on them? Well, lipids and water don't mix. So since they have lipids on the back on their fur, water's going to just run right off of that. Okay, that's great for them because then that means they're not going to get wet, they're not going to get cold. It means that they can actually stay warm and maintain that internal body temperature. So that's good for them. It protects them from the actually surrounding elements. Okay, right here we actually have, let's go ahead and move this guy. Right here it's talking about hydrophobic. Lipids are hydrophobic, like I said. Water-faring, they don't like water. Okay, non-polar. Okay, they're non-polar because they have that carbon-carbon or carbon and hydrogen bonds. Okay, a type or a form of lipid are fats. Okay, fats are a form of lipid that cells use to store energy for long-term use. Okay, so if you have a little extra fat, it's okay. It's all good. You're just storing it. You're just storing it for later. Don't worry about it. You're being smart. Don't worry about it. Okay. Also, insulation. Lipid is good for insulation because from the environment, insulation is good from the environment for plants and animals. So polar bears, for example, and also bears use insulation to help them actually insulate them from the environment. For example, like I said, polar bears, it helps keep them warm because they're actually in those extremely cold temperatures. Okay. Lipids are also a very important building block of many, many different hormones. And they're an important part of the plasma membrane. Right here is a picture of the plasma membrane, but I have a really even closer picture of it on the next slide. So I'm going to go ahead and emphasize on that in just a second. And some different kinds of lipids that we'll talk about in just a second are, like we just talked about, the fats. There's also the oils, there's waxes, there's phospholipids, which I'm going to emphasize on this plasma membrane, and there's steroids. So here's your phospholipids. So phospholipids, okay, are lipids with two hydrophobic hydrocarbon tails bound to a hydrophilic phosphate-containing head. So that sounds like a lot, but I'm going to let you focus on the most important things, okay? So this is your cell membrane, okay? This whole thing is kind of doing a circle around your entire cell. So it's a phospholipid bilayer. So the actual tails, which are hydrophobic, so these two hydrophobic tails are facing each other. They're the kind of lighter yellow areas. So this one's facing this way, this one's facing this way. They're scared of water, they're hydrophobic, they don't want to touch water. That's why they're facing each other. This part is facing the outside of the cell, this part would be facing the inside of the cell. These are the aqueous areas, the areas that would be wet. That's why they're facing this way and this way. These guys don't want to touch that. That's why they're facing each other, okay? They're arranged in two layers to form the lipid bilayer of cell membranes, okay? So hydrophobic tails and hydrophilic phosphate heads. Hydrophilic means they are water-loving. Hydrophilic heads are facing water. Hydrophilic heads facing water, okay? And it kind of closes it in and gets a close-up picture for you guys right here. So this is one of these phospholipids for you. So this is one of these guys on this side, and then just if you flip this guy around, it'd be also on this side. So here's your hydrophilic water-loving head phosphate group right here, and here's your two hydrophobic scared tails. Okay, here's your fats. We're talking about a form of lipid, a triglyceride. Tri meaning three, Okay, and it is actually made out of a glycerol group and 3 fatty acids. So here's a glycerol, and here's your 3 fatty acid tails. Okay, pretty simple. Here it is again. Here's your glycerol, and here's your 3 fatty acid tails. Now, I want you to pay attention now to this, because this we're about to get into now. I want you to pay attention to this saturated and unsaturated right here. Fatty acid. Okay? Big important as far as when it comes to what we're about to talk about next. Okay? A lot of people tell you eat this because it's good for you, eat that, don't eat that because it's bad for you, but a lot of people don't explain the science behind it. I'm about to explain it to you right now, so you can school somebody else about it, because you're about to be smarter than a whole lot of other people, because you're going to be able to explain the science behind why you should and shouldn't eat saturated foods and unsaturated foods and so forth. Okay, so I'm going to explain this to you in the simplest way possible also. So saturated versus unsaturated. Which one's good for you, which one's bad for you? Let's put it in terms like this. Look at this guy first, saturated. Think about the game of Tetris. If I was playing Tetris, you see how this guy goes like this? Do, 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 do. If I wanted to stack him up on top of each other, do, do, do. How many times do you think I could stack him up? I can stack him up pretty well, right? Right on top of the other, on top of the other, on top of the other. Because the next one's going to stack up right here. The next one's going to stack up right on top of there. The next one's going to stack up. And it's going to just stack up right on top of the next one, on top of the next one. Pretty nicely, right? Well, that's exactly what they're going to do in your arteries. Okay, that's why saturated fats are bad. Okay, saturated fats are solid at room temperature as well. That's why they're also solid in your arteries. Okay, because they can actually solidify in your arteries. This is coconut oil. Okay, coconut oil is solid at room temperature. Okay, the reason being because of what it can do right here. It just stacks up on top of each other with no problem. You know why? Try to do the same thing. Let's look at this first. Try to do the same thing with the unsaturated fat first. Think about Tetris again. You try to stack this guy up as high as you can in the game of Tetris. What's going to happen? You can stack it up a couple times, but is it going to be nice and is it going to be a nice solid stack? No. Why? Because of this kink right here, because of this double bond. That is, eventually you're going to stack it up, but it's never going to be a nice solid stack. That's a good thing though. That's why unsaturated fats are liquid at room temperature, because no matter what, there's always going to be some sort of gap that actually liquids can actually still run through. So that's good though, because in your arteries, that means liquid can still go through. Your blood can still go through, because there's always going to be that kink. So these guys can never actually solidify. It can actually never form that extra plaque in your arteries. That's a good thing though. That's what you want. Okay, so saturated. Remember, these guys are going to solidify. They're going to be solid at room temperature. That's how you can tell a lot of these items if they're good for you or they're bad for you. Okay, butter is solid at room temperature. It's going to form plaque in your arteries also. Okay, it's not good for you. Full fat milk, red meats, sweet snacks, frying butter, coconut oil, so forth. The unsaturated fats, the ones that are not going to form plaque in your arteries, are your fish oils, your trail mixes, your olive oil, and so forth. So here they are, exactly what we just explained, but right now for you guys can actually read this over and look at it. Remember, it all has to do with that double bond in unsaturated fats that will not allow it to stack up and solidify. That's the key. That's the most important thing when it comes to unsaturated fats being better for you. Okay, that's why they're actually oils. That's why they're liquid at room temperature. It's not going to be tightly compact like saturated fats are. Okay, Same thing when it comes to cis fats and trans fats. It all has to do with those double bonds, okay? So, cis fats, do that. Cis fats, see that double bond? The hydrogens are both on the same side of that double bond. Trans fats, which are the good ones, there's actually the hydrogens on one side of the double bond, the hydrogens on the other side of the double bond, okay? These are the unhealthy fats right here. These are the healthy fats, usually happen naturally, okay? This is what's going on here. This is a much more up close view of these guys. The food industries, okay, they actually have a hydrogen gas that's bubbled and pushed through the oils that causes hydrogenation and solidifies a lot of the foods that you guys eat, but it makes them semi-solid and it makes them last longer. The most common one that I'm aware of is peanut butter. If you guys know anybody that's ever bought organic peanut butter or natural Korean peanut butter, it actually separates, and you kind of have to mix it up really well, because it, like, all the oil separates on the top, and then the peanut butter kind of sits down the bottom, and the peanut butter that's been hydrogenated doesn't do that. This is this is hydrogenated peanut butter. It's solid. There's no liquid. That means it's been hydrogenated. Okay? That means there are more of which fat in this one? Trans fats. Okay? Because it's been hydrogenated. This is not good for you or good for us because of the fact that it actually leads to bad cholesterol, which can lead to heart disease. It all has to do with the chemistry behind this stuff. So, good to know. A lot of good, insightful information. Okay? And you can share it with a lot of people. Okay? Other lipids to know about? Steroids. Okay? There's going to be 4-length carbon rings and a short tail. Specifically in cholesterol. There's a really good picture of cholesterol right here. It's a key component of the plasma membrane. We'll see the cholesterol is kind of sticking out of the plasma membrane when we get to the cell structures. And waxes are another type of lipid. A common wax that we'll see is actually on plant leaves, which actually helps them from drying out. And waxes are made up of a hydrocarbon chain. Remember, what's a hydrocarbon chain? It's actually a molecule made up of only carbons and hydrogens. Okay? And functional groups. Okay? So, what are functional groups? Functional groups are a set of commonly bound groups of atoms covalently bonded to carbon in organic molecules. The unique functional groups present on a biomolecule determine its reactivity, its solubility, and other physical properties that lead to its biological role in several different living organisms. So it's actually very, very important to know. Okay, so that's why we need to talk about them in this case right here. So for this particular class, what you need to know about right here is how to identify these in regards to right here what they look like. So the hydroxyl, this is actually its side chain. So this is going to be kind of like the organic compound that it's attached to. So this can actually change according to whatever it's attached to, okay? But what you need to be focused on right here is this would be the structure right here that you're going to be looking at. Maybe I should do a different color so it's being more identifiable right here. So red. Okay. So like for the hydroxyl group, it'd be this guy right here. Like I said, this is just a side chain that it's attached to. Okay. So how this can be written would also be just the OH right there. That's the hydroxyl functional group. Okay, like I said, that's going to kind of tell us the important ways on how it's going to react, how the actual whole compound in a whole will react. So that's why it's important for us to know how all the different specific properties of these. Okay, how about methyl? So once again, this is the side chain. This is the compound that we don't know, of course, because it could be anything on this side, but we're going to be focused on is the methyl group in this case, which is right here. And that really simply is just CH3, just like it looks right there. So here's a methyl, so hydroxyl, here's the methyl. How about the carbonyl group? Okay, how would you do the carbonyl? Usually, really simply, CHO. Okay, how about the carboxyl? COOH usually. Okay, amino and H2. The phosphate, okay, usually PO, sorry, 4, and superscriptive -2, and sulfhydryl, very simple, S and H. Okay, so that one's pretty simple right there, and so forth and so forth.